Hello everybody, Sharpened here with you today, bringing you a video on an easier way to memorize your trigonometric ratios. So they would be the sine, cosine, and tangent of your basic angles. And those are 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. Let's get started. So what I've got here on the screen for you right now is a very simple table with all the information that we're going to need. If you memorize these ratios in a table format, you're going to find it a lot easier to memorize in the long term. So to start off, for all of these sine and cosines of your basic angles, we're going to create a fraction. On the numerator, we're going to have a square root, but we're going to leave what goes underneath the square root blank for just a minute. And on the denominator, we're going to have the number 2. So once again, we want to do these for all of the sines and all of the cosines of your basic angles. Just like so. So then what we need to do is we need to fill out what goes underneath each of these square roots. And it's really quite simple. For all of the sines, what we're going to do is starting from the left and working to the right, we're going to count up. And what that means is for sine of 0, we're going to start with the number 0 and we're going to count up as we go along. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like so. With the cosines, it's just as easy as the sines, but instead, this time I'm going to count downwards. So starting from the number 4, we're going to count down. So 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And that's it. That's all of your sine and cosines done. But what we can do is we can clean up some of these ones, because these fractions can be a bit nasty to deal with sometimes. So say, for example, the sine of 0, we have the square root of 0 divided by 2. Well, the square root of 0 is just 0, and 0 divided by 2 is 0. So we can just leave it like that. Also, the cosine of 90 is the exact same fraction as the sine of 0. We have the square root of 0 over 2, so once again, we can just simplify that down to 0. We can also clean up the sine of 90. So the sine of 90, we have the square root of 4 over 2. Now the square root of 4 is just 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we can actually simplify that one down to just 1. Once again, the cosine of 0 is actually the exact same fraction as the sine of 90, which also equals to 1. And there we go, so we've cleaned up some of those ones there. Let's move on to the tan. Instead of counting up or counting down, we're going to do something a little bit different for the tan, and we're actually going to divide. And what that means is, in order to get the tan of 0, what we do is we take the sine of 0, which is 0, and we divide it by the cos of 0, which is 1. So in that case, 0 divided by 1 is just 0. And that is the tan of 0. It's as easy as that. We're going to skip the tan of 30, 45, and 60, only because these fractions here are a little bit more difficult to work with. So let's jump over to the tan of 90 just for now. And once again, in the same fashion, to get the tan of 90, we're going to take the sine of 90, which is 1, and we're going to divide it by the cos of 90, which is 0. Now, 1 divided by 0, for some of you who may not know, this is actually what we call undefined. And the reason for that is a little bit tricky to understand, so I'll illustrate that with an example. So if we were to have an easy division, 10 divided by 5, what we say is, how many times can 5 go into number 10? We say that 5 goes into 10 twice. So if you understand that, let's make a little bit of a jump now to 1 divided by 0. In order to get 1 divided by 0, we have to think, how many times can 0 go into 1? Now the answer is any number. Any number. So the reason for that is we can put 0 into 1 once. That won't change anything. We could also put 0 into 1 maybe 10 times, or 20 times, or 30 times, or 40 times. So essentially what I'm saying is 0 can go into 1 any number of times that you want. And because there's any number is the answer, we can have as many different answers as we want. And because we can't define a singular answer, we actually call that undefined. It just means that there's no single one answer that we can use to answer the question 1 divided by 0. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Now let's jump back to the tan of 30, tan of 45, and the tan of 60. Now dividing two fractions can be a little bit tricky, because in order to get the tan of 30, we have to take the sine of 30, which is the square root of 1 over 2, and the cos of 30, which is the square root of 3 over 2, and we have to divide them. Now that can be a little bit tricky, so I'll show you a shortcut. In order to get the tan of 30, what we're going to do is we're just going to create a fraction with this number here being on the top and this number here being on the bottom. It's that simple. So the answer is going to be root 1 over root 3. Jumping over to the tan of 45, using that same shortcut technique I just showed you, we're going to take the top number, square root of 2, and divide it by this number here, the square root of 2. So the answer is going to be square root of 2 over square root of 2. Once more, with the tan of 60, we're going to take this number here and divide it by this number here. Just the top numbers on each of these fractions. So that will give us the square root of 3 over the square root of 1. Now once again, we can do some cleaning up if we want to. With the tan of 30, the square root of 1 is just 1, so we can rewrite this as 1 over root 3. With the tan of 45, we have root 2 over root 2. Now you don't need to know what the square root of 2 is, but all we need to know is that the top number and the bottom number are the same. And whenever you divide two numbers that are identical, you get 1. So we can actually simplify the tan of 45 to just 1. Lastly, we have the square root of 3 over the square root of 1 for tan of 60. Now the square root of 1 is just 1, and anything divided by 1 is itself, so we can simplify this one down to just the square root of 3. And there we have it, guys. That's how to memorize your trigonometric ratios. Now if you want an easier way to remember that we need to count up for sine, then count down for cos, and then divide for tan, I ask that you cast your mind back a couple years to when the popular song Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson featuring Bruno Mars was out. A little bit strange, but it works. Specifically the lyric Uptown Funk You Up, you can actually replace the lyrics to up, down, divided up, and it will help you remember the order that I mentioned. So once again, we need to count up for sine first, then down for cos, and then divide. As well, if I just scroll down here, we have a completed table of all of the things that I've mentioned in this video, so feel free to take a screenshot and then that way you can use it for your own notes.